Welcome to another episode of Teen Minds Redefined, where we strive to redefine our relationships with our teenagers to foster settled and authentic teenagers in our world. And today I have a very special guest, Sharon King. Sharon is an international trainer of energy psychology techniques for transforming trauma and living a more joyful, connected, and empowered life. One of her specialties is working with pre- and perinatal birth trauma for both mother and baby. As a best-selling author, Sharon shares her extensive knowledge in her book, Heal Your Birth, Heal Your Life. Co-author of Return to the Mother World, Ancient Feminine Wisdom in Times of Transition. Sharon's specialty is transforming your experience of giving birth or being born and any trauma associated with conception, pregnancy, and birth. She also works with mothers-to-be to achieve a natural birth, as well as infertility, IVF, adoption issues, and healing the wounds of losing a baby. Her training is extensive with qualifications and experience in holistic healing modalities and creating her own Heal Your Birth, formerly known as Matrix Birth Reimprinting, and the Light Matrix techniques for transforming ancestral patterns, past lives, discovering your life purpose, and manifesting the life of your dreams. Sharon is living in beautiful Thailand and is hosting retreats and producing online programs for parents-to-be to achieve a conscious conception, pregnancy, birth, plus hosting new training programs for students. So welcome, Sharon. That is quite a resume.
Thank you, Cheryl.
And do you want to add anything to this before I launch into this conversation?
Okay, I'm just pausing there. There's a clicking noise. There's a duh, duh, duh. Every time you speak, there's a clicking noise.
Maybe I'm touching something. Is that better?
No.
Oh. Okay, maybe I will.
It only happens when you're speaking.
Oh, okay. I'm going to switch to different headphones and see what happens.
Sorry, that was such a beautiful introduction, and I just wanted to give you a little bit of editing space before.
Oh, yeah. No, that's, I appreciate that. Hang on. Can you hear me?
Okay, speak again.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Nope.
Still hear that clicking sound though.
Oh, that's weird. I've just done 3 interviews this afternoon, so I don't know what it is.
Hang on, let me record it for you.
I wonder if it's something.
Oh, it's just one of those. Hang on. Keep speaking.
I wonder if it's just one of those things that my editor can get rid of.
Okay, I've just unplugged you so I can record. Can you do a little bit of speaking?
Yep. Does that sound any different?
Yes. I'm just wondering if it's my headset.
Oh, maybe. Okay. Because I literally just came off 3 interviews today, so.
No, that's better.
Okay. Okay, then maybe I'll go back to. Does this sound different than the other with the mic?
Oh, hang on. Keep talking. Maybe if it's just my headset come out on the recording, so try again.
Okay, I'm just going to.
No, I think it's my headset. That's okay. Let's just do it.
Okay.
I've never had that before.
All right.
Yes.
If it's your headset, then we won't hear. Oh, that's, yeah,
so
that's
you
weird.
asked me if there's anything I want to add to that.
Thank God for editors.
Yes.
Can you hear me? I can't hear you. There we go. Okay.
Yes. It's just taken a bit to click in. Okay.
Oh yeah, there's now. That's weird.
You can hear it?
I can hear it, but your lips aren't moving.
Hey, what's happening?
Okay. Well, it wasn't doing it when I had this in, so.
Yeah, okay, let's do it. I can actually hear you better with the other one. Sorry.
Okay, now let's try this.
Yeah, yeah.
Perfect.
Let's do it.
Perfect. Okay.
Yes.
So
Sorry.
we've done the bio, so that's okay. So
Yep. The question you asked me was there anything I wanted to add to that? I think that's pretty complete. There's probably lots I could add, but right now I think that just about covers
perfect.
everything.
No problem. So I guess my very first question, and I want to go through some of the terms, of course, because it took me a minute to go, what the heck is this? What the heck does that mean? But why this? What got you here?
Okay, so that could be a very long story, or I'll give you the edited highlights. So what got me here, I later found out, was my own in utero and birth experience. But I also know that I was born to do this job. So everything that happened to me in my life kind of led to me now being working with people with trauma, helping them to transform those experiences. But I always knew through, I was searching. I felt like I was searching all my life to find something that I was meant to be doing. And I did massage, aromatherapy, reflexology, Indian head, all the animal things, because I have a passion for animals, animal aromatherapy and training and things like that. And it wasn't until 2007, in my 40s, that I discovered EFT. And for anybody who doesn't know what EFT is, it's the tapping technique.
Yes.
Where you focus on trauma or an emotional event, and it helps you regulate that experience. And it was that 3-day workshop where I saw so many massive, big transformations in people that I went, like, it was like a aha moment. It's like, this is what I've been searching for. Where have you been all my life? And of course, EFT wasn't around when I was a child or a young teen. So I synchronicity has it, I bumped into EFT at the right time, and then with the right trainer, because Carl Dawson then went on to develop something called matrix reimprinting, which is the concept of using the EFT tapping, but instead of tapping on yourself in this now moment, you go back in time and you imagine tapping on your younger self. And it's your younger self that holds that emotion, that experience, all the thoughts, feelings, emotions that are associated with that trauma. It's your younger self that's holding on to that. So you go back in time and work with your younger self. So that then kind of opened up a whole new world for me. And I guess where I stepped into the birth arena was through meeting a lady called Caroline, and I affectionately could now call her chapter 1 because she's chapter 1 in my book.
Okay. Yes.
Yes. But she was 5 months pregnant with her 3rd child, absolutely terrified of giving birth, like really terrified of giving birth, because she'd done it twice before, to 2 boys before. Both labours had medical interventions which she didn't want. They were long labour, and she had trouble breastfeeding. So in one session, we worked with the birth of her first son. And the biggest trauma point is interesting, because people would think that physical pain is the biggest trauma point, but it's not. It's what happens in your mind. It's what happens when you lose trust of somebody that you've put your trust in. It's when you lose trust in yourself. And I always say that at a big point in our life, like giving birth, that's when our unhealed negative emotions and beliefs can come up even more strongly, because we're being tested, we're being put under pressure. So for her, she was very frustrated and didn't want to have the epidural. She didn't want the baby monitor. She was panicking because the baby's heartbeat was coming down. So we kind of worked on that and transformed that for her. But the biggest loss of trust came when the midwife kept saying to her, look, you're tired, you've been in labor a long time, you're not dilating, like have an epidural. Yeah. And she didn't want an epidural, but she gave in the end. She gave in to an epidural. Took 2 hours for the anaesthetist to come. When he did come, gave her the epidural, and then the midwife checked her again and went, oh, you're now 10 centimeters dilated. You could have given birth naturally, but hey, let's do it without pain. Right? For her, that was the biggest trauma, that loss of confidence, that loss of trust. Mm-hmm. So anyway, so we worked through that, sacked that midwife, sent her out the room, brought in a new midwife, and then the birth just flowed. So she carried on, she went into the birthing process, she went into the bonding process, and then we went back to our own birth experience. So once we'd kind of, the technique kind of takes you through all the points of trauma, you clear the points of trauma, and then you go back and do the birth how it was meant to be.
You rewrite the whole story.
You rewrite the whole story. So once the trauma's gone, you go back and you do it how it should have been. Now, this sets off the same neurons in the brain, the same physiology, the same oxytocin hormones are released in the body, because your mind doesn't know what's real and what's imagined.
Oh my God. So I'm going to say, I read the book in 2 nights. I could not stop. And I mean, I've had different authors on and read the book over time, and they've been great books, but I was just entranced with what I was like, what? You're not just talking about, you talk about people going back and then releasing blocks, and you hear all that spirituality connection, heart connection. And then I'm like, wait a minute. She just rewrote this whole story.
Yeah.
And you even just said that whole introduction about Carolyn, and then going back, you said it so fast that I read the book. So I know what you're talking about. But let's pretend the listeners didn't read the book.
I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
It's a long story. I'm trying to make it short, but
no, I understand. But what I'm saying is that I might not understand that you just literally tapped and went back into her whole story.
Yes.
And is this okay? Just explain tapping before, if somebody's going, what the hell are they talking about?
Yeah. Okay. So the concept of EFT is you focus on something that's going on in your life. So let's just say you're angry about something because you just had a row with your partner or your child or whatever, or your teenage child is driving you crazy. Excuse me, because he won't get off his PlayStation upstairs, or whatever the new version of a PlayStation is nowadays. So you'll tap, you acknowledge. First of all, you have to acknowledge where you are before you can change where you are. So even though I'm feeling all of this anger because he's on that bloody PlayStation again, and he hasn't even come down for his dinner, and so disrespectful, blah, blah, blah. And you can just blah as much as you want. I can completely accept myself anyway. Or I choose to release this now, or whatever the positive statement is, however it is that you want to feel. Mm-hmm. And then you tap around the meridian point. So all of this anger in my body, I can feel it knotting in my stomach. This knot of anger in my stomach. All of this knot of anger in my stomach. I choose to release some of this now. This anger, so frustrating. Won't come down for his dinner. Totally disrespectful. I wonder what that reminds me of. Yeah, it reminds me of when I was a teenager. Yeah, I was pretty disrespectful too. Yeah, I got into trouble for doing similar things. Yeah, and then it kind of like, the more you tap, the more it takes the energy out of that experience for you. And it helps you to regulate your emotions. It helps you to calm down. But you also feel like you've been heard. Even if you're just hearing yourself doing it, you feel like you've been heard. And the energy system, because what people are probably unaware of is that we store emotion and trauma in our body, our physical body. And if we don't address it, then it can lead to all sorts of physical illnesses.
So how do you get from, I'm pissed off at my teenager to, I'm going back 30 years to birth. To a different story. There's a gap.
There's a gap. All right. So for Caroline, I'm going to keep coming back to Caroline here and using her as the example. So, so her fear was in the now moment about giving birth to her child. So then you go back to where has she had these experiences before? So the first experience her subconscious chose to go back to the birth of her first son. Now, from that point, we then went back into her own birth experience, right? So it's almost like either your younger self that you're working with will tell you where you need to go next, or the thought, it's almost like, if anybody believes in a higher self, or it's almost like your higher self kind of drops in, goes, oh, okay, so this is part of this stream. If you think of like a string of pearls, like there's always a pattern to what happens. So with Caroline, we then went back to her own birth experience, and she could, in her mind, she could see her mum. Her mum had the same fears that she did.
So, and did she know that, or
no?
She's putting that in the story. Okay.
Yeah, yes. So when you start working with your younger selves talk back to you. At the age level that they're at, they communicate back with you, because it's like that part of your consciousness is just being held in that time. And it's kind of like out there. All right, it's being held out there. And it's not until if you think about your computer, it's not until you double click on something and open up a program. So it's still attached to her. So my job is just to go around finding these attached, unhealed traumas. And it can be anywhere on your timeline. It can even be a past life. It can even belong to your ancestors, because that's part of the other work that I do. So when she stepped into the picture in her mind, she saw her mother laying there on the bed. She felt her mother, and she could feel that the mother had the same fear about becoming a mum, giving birth. She was the first. No, she wasn't the first. She was the second. But mum was in fear. And we always, like, usually in a traumatic time, we feel isolated and alone. So one of the key tricks of the trade is to bring somebody else in. So we brought in, her mum wanted her own mother to come in, but then we discovered there's friction between mum and grandmum, so we had to do a little bit of tapping on both of them to get them to play nicely together. And then we tapped on Caroline's baby self. So we tune in and see how the baby's feeling. All right. So Caroline's doing all of this herself. She's picking up the information from her baby self. She's picking up the information from her mum, picking up the information from her grandmother. We tap on them all. We clear the trauma. Baby Caroline comes out being held in mum's arms, and went through the bonding process with her. And then I thought, that's it. We can now move on to somewhere else. And she suddenly went, oh, she said, I've got this feeling, this feeling in my chest coming up, this fear. And I'm going, it's very strange. In my head, I'm thinking, it's very strange. That doesn't normally happen. And then she said, oh my God. She said, what I know. So it was a combination of her tuning into what happened, but also what she consciously knows is that she was born with yellow jaundice. So she had to be separated from her mum. For 2 weeks, she had to stay in hospital, and her mum would be with her during the day, but at night, her mum would go home to be with her older brother. So the baby was on its own at night. So this feeling of separation anxiety came up. So her body gave her that experience, so we could look at that. So we went and worked with her baby self. We tapped on her baby self. Now, her baby self didn't understand why mum wasn't there. Right? So Caroline, as her adult self, explains to her baby self, look, it's not that mum doesn't love you. It's because she has to go home and look after your brother, but she'll be back tomorrow. What would you like? Who would you like instead? What would make you feel safe? Now, when we swapped out the midwife in Caroline's session with her first son, she brought in an angel called Annie into that session. So we asked the baby, what would you like? In my mind, I'm thinking, oh, baby Caroline's going to choose that she wants to go home with her mum. But no, baby Caroline wanted Angel Annie to stay with her. So she no longer felt alone.
Oh,
So what's interesting is that after that session, when I did speak to her, she told me her husband was a professional footballer, used to travel all over the world playing football. The day before he would leave to go, they would always have a big row, always, go head to head. And she never knew why. She always instigated the row. He partook in the row. Then he would go away. Then he would come back again. And then it wasn't until a few months after the session that she realized that she was no longer having to have that argument with him before he went away. So that adult experience with her husband was replaying her mum going away at night and coming back again. So that separation anxiety that she felt as a baby was recurring itself in her relationship with her husband.
Oh my gosh.
Unconsciously. There wasn't a conscious thought about this at all until the aha moment came of, oh my God, I've healed that separation from mum at birth. And now I don't have to have an argument with my husband.
Oh my gosh.
It was her trigger.
So when you are talking about Carolyn and you're tapping on her baby self, is Carolyn tapping herself at the time, or is this?
Yes. So there's a number of ways of doing it. We were together in person. So as a therapist, I can hold your hand, I can tap on the points, while in her mind, she's got her eyes closed and she's working on her younger self. Me and you were working on over the internet like this. I would just lead you in tapping. I'll just say, okay, so as you're tapping on yourself, imagine tapping on your younger self right now, even though you're feeling all of this fear and you're feeling all alone and you don't understand where mum's gone. You're still a beautiful little baby, and I'm here to help you now.
Oh, I'm going to cry.
And she would be saying this to her baby self. All of this fear, you're not alone. You're not alone. I'm here to help you. I understand. I'm really sorry you feel mum's abandoned you, but she does love you. And she didn't really have a choice. The hospital wouldn't let her stay. But mum loves you very much. Yeah?
So what is the significance of the point?
Point. Okay, good question. Most of the points are at the end of the meridian system. So if you think about acupuncture, for instance, they put needles into certain points in your body, depending on what you've got going on.
Yes.
So Gary Craig, who created EFT, originally did something called TFT, thought field therapy. And with that, it's like, if you have this issue, then you do this sequence of tapping. If you have that issue, you do this other sequence of tapping. And what Gary Craig did was to streamline it. So the top of the head, for example, is like a junction. There's a lot of meridians that cross over in the middle of your head there. So you're just tapping and you're just creating a frequency. Imagine like being a spider in a web, and you're just like just those webs, you're just like making them move and encouraging it to let go. All right, let go of the shock, let go of the fear, let go of the anger, the sadness, the grief, the shame, the guilt, because we as human beings are very good stuffers. It's just like, that was a painful experience. Yeah, I'll just put that in the box over there. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to get a little bit like deeper here, but I was sexually abused as a child. I'm just going to stuff that over there. I'm going to put all that shame down into my womb or hold it in my breasts. And then you end up breast cancer, ovarian cancer, potentially anything that's around the sexual organs can be around a sexual abuse event. Or it can be like the breast. Think about what the breasts are for, like nurturing and mothering, and so there could be something around loss of a child or something like that. So I don't want to take it too deep into that direction, but because we're energetic beings as well as physical beings, then we're working with energy, and emotions are energy, thoughts are energy. Even our physical body, when it comes down to the cells in our body, they're just energy. So when you're working in a way of just stimulating the energy, but you're using your thoughts, feelings, and emotions, when you're bringing all of that in, it just helps to release it on all the different levels, the physical, mental, emotional, spiritual level.
I don't think I've ever been speechless. So, okay, now, would Caroline have done, I'm going to use Caroline again, as
Yes.
in one set, like, are these things done in one session? Do people come and see you multiple times for the same release, or?
Well, Caroline was a little bit of an exception, because I feel I want to go into a little bit of life purpose very quickly here. So my life mission, my life purpose is to help people transform their experiences of birth. All right, that's one of my missions.
Yep.
And I believe she came into my life at that point of setting me even more firmly on that path. Because when I first learned EFT, I was like, I want to work with everything. I don't want to specialize in anything. But she came along to help me. So I think we probably worked for about an hour and a half, 2 hours. So we did birth of her first son. We did our own birth experience. We did the birth of her second son, which was very similar to the first one. And then we did what I call a future birth reimprinting with her. And we showed the baby how the birth was going to be in the future. Now, it's very unusual to actually do, like, usually that each birth would be one session. We would have done the birth of her first son, then her own birth, then the birth of the second son, and then the future birth. If I work with a pregnant woman, for instance, those are definitely the areas I would cover, plus what's going on in her life, and maybe look at her relationships. But yeah, so more than, if it's just like a event, you can usually get that done in one session. But as I said, you're also looking for that string of pearls. So bringing it back to teenagers, you've got a teenager that's acting out.
Yes.
Like, there's been all 10 plus years of experience that your teenagers had. So the birth, the in conception, in utero, and birth, and the first year of life are what I call the foundations of who we are. So if your child has had a very, you had a great pregnancy, you were in connection with the baby, you'd gone through and had a pretty, I don't want to say a normal birth, because there's no such thing, but as natural as possible birth, unmedicalized, you got to do the bonding process. You're a happy person that's dealt with a lot of your traumas. That child is going to be born with a real solid foundation. It's going to feel love. It's going to feel, I can trust the world. Like, mum's got me, dad's got me. I can trust the world. It's safe to go out into the world.
Yeah.
Now, unfortunately, a lot of us didn't come from that beginning. And we have what I call unstable foundations. So maybe mum wasn't expecting to get pregnant, and she was shocked at finding out she was pregnant. Or she even thought about termination, which to the baby is a life-threatening experience. And also, like, no judgment for anybody who goes through that thought process either, because it's not about the baby. And when I work with people whose parents have thought about that, we help the baby understand it's not about you. Mum doesn't even know you yet. It's like how this is going to impact her life. So it's not about you. So that's one of the ways of, like, healing that trauma for somebody, because we have this, even as a baby, we still have this, there's no separation. We can't separate from mum's thoughts to our own thoughts. There is just experience through mum's perceptions. So so it depends on what you want to work on. Sometimes it can be multiple sessions. So if that teen, for instance, I don't know, got bullied at school and had a horrible breakup with a girlfriend or something like that, then you're going to, well, first of all, I would want to do the birth experience to recreate the solid foundations with mum. So that's the great part. It's like most teenagers are like, what do you mean do a therapy session? Not having any of that. Like, what are you talking about, you crazy woman?
I can't get them to listen to the podcast.
Exactly. Exactly. But what you can do is you can be the surrogate for your your son, your daughter, for your child. So what I've experienced over and over and over again, this isn't a one-off experience. It's like over and over again. When if I was to work with you on the birth of your children, then something would either subtly change or dramatically change. I'll give you an example. One of my clients, just very recently, I asked her, because one of the questions I always ask people is what's currently going on in your life, and where do you want to be? What do you want to change about it? What's the future looking like? And she was saying that her son has this terrible anxiety about any transitions. She didn't say transitions, but moving house. He's constantly feeling unsafe and terrified of having to move house. He's got this anxiety about moving house, right? So you would, think, well, what's going on here? But when we went back into, okay, so tell me what happened when you found out you were pregnant. What happened in your pregnancy? Any big traumas happen? And she said, oh gosh, yes. She said, when I was 4 months pregnant, I was living with my mother-in-law, and we came home, told her that we were pregnant for a couple of weeks. That was okay. And then all of a sudden, she told us that we have to leave. Like, now, you have to leave. I can't have you in my house. So literally her and her husband got thrown out of the house when she was 4 months pregnant. So I said, well, how did that work out for you? She said, oh, it was fine. She said, we found this flat, we made it our own, blah, blah, blah. I said, but in that moment, let's go back to that moment. And she said, well, I was devastated. I felt really betrayed. I'm angry about it. In fact, I'm really angry now about it. What mother would do that to another mother? I just don't understand it. And of course, the more she's speaking, you could see that this is like a really big moment in her life that she's not thought about for the last 17 years or however old her child is. But it was like, no wonder that child now has grown up with this fear of like, am I safe here? Like, do I have to move? Very unsettled, because the baby also went through that shock and that trauma of being thrown out the house, and all the thoughts and feelings and the anger and everything that mum had, that feeling of unsafety. I can't believe this, blah, 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 just got programmed into her child. Imprint, that's your imprint.
Oh my goodness. And so from conception.
Yes, conception time. I know there's lots of different beliefs around when the soul enters the body.
Yeah.
My belief is there is always a connection right from conception.
Okay.
So when we go back, again, I think this story is in my book, but when we go back to the conception point, kind of like thinking of on an ancestral level as well. I worked with a guy who had PTSD in America. He was adopted, knew nothing about his birth experience, nothing at all. And we'd been working on trauma after trauma after trauma that he consciously remembers. And his PTSD was getting much better, but it still wasn't quite there yet. Yeah. So the one session that took us like to the goalpost, if you like, was when we went back to that point just before conception. So he could see the egg, he could see the sperm. And as he tunes, remember, he knows nothing about his parents. He knows nothing about his birth experience. There's no record. He tunes into the sperm and he said, oh my God, he said, my dad had PTSD. He was in the Vietnam War. He said, I've just received that information.
Oh my gosh.
So we tapped on the sperm. And we released that PTSD part of the sperm. And we helped that sperm to let it go. And then we did the conception how it should have been without the trauma.
And this is what you're visualizing. You're visualizing, you're tapping on the sperm. Yeah. This, right? Oh my goodness. This is incredible. I mean, I've heard of tapping and, never really experienced it. And it's when I listen, like Carolyn's first birth was my son, 100%. And so I'm like, okay, I'm all over the place with all this.
Okay, can I just finish Caroline's story? Because for me, it feels still out there and open, and then that might
Yes.
help to consolidate everything. So we did those 4 birth experiences, including showing the baby how the birth was going to be in the future.
Mm-hmm.
So after that session, I heard nothing from her for 4 or 5 months. And then I got an email from Carl who said, oh, just thought I'd let you know Caroline's had her baby, because it was on one of his courses that I met Caroline. So I went, oh, great. How was the birth? And he like emailed me back and said, I don't know. I'm a man. I didn't ask. Here's her email. So I was like, thank you. So I emailed her and I did the congratulations, congratulations on having a baby boy. So happy for you. How was the birth? And she messaged me back and she said, we need to talk. And it was like, God damn it. Why won't anybody tell me? So anyway, we got on the phone and she said, look, just let me tell you all the changes that happened, and then I'll tell you about the birth. So I'm going, okay. So one of the things that she told me was about that the separation anxiety had been healed with her husband, no longer doing the fighting.
Mm-hmm.
Her second boy, when he was born, the midwife twisted his head to get out. So he had neck injury.
Yeah.
He stopped complaining about his neck. And she had to keep saying, like, poking him, like, how's your neck? Yeah, it's fine. Go away, mum. It's fine. Just like, but you always complain about, yeah, it's fine now. The pain's gone. Go away. So his neck injury went because we dealt with that in the session. People were commenting, people who knew them well, going, I don't know what's changed, but you guys, like, feel closer, more bonded, more. And she said, yeah, I feel that too. She said, my husband noticed when I got home that day from the course where I did the session with her, she said, I'd lost all my fear of giving birth. And even he noticed, he went, my God, Caroline, you're happy. What's going on? What's happened? Must have been a good course. So she told him about all the things that she had just done. So she went into that birth experience feeling totally different, feeling like a warrior. And she knew that this time she was going to give birth naturally. And she bloody did it. She said the birth, she said it wasn't short, it wasn't long, it was like medium. She said, I didn't need any pain relief. She said, in fact, there was only 2 points that you could say were painful. She said, and I just breathed him out. He just came straight out. And he's the most peaceful baby. He latched on very easily. Now, of course, some people would say, well, this is your 3rd baby, so you kind of should know how to do it now. But considering she was in all that fear and she had 2 births that were exactly the same, even though the doctors say to her, don't worry, Caroline, 2 births are never the same. Yeah. She had 2 identical ones. So this 3rd experience just was everything that she wanted. And she actually went on to give birth to another boy. So she got 4 boys. So I think they're going for their own football team or soccer team for you guys in America. Yeah. So she gave birth to another boy totally naturally, didn't need any more work from me, no more sessions from me. She just gave birth a 4th time in the most natural way as well. So it was by talking to Caroline, to answer your question, how did I get into this? It was through working with Caroline. In that moment, that conversation that we had, I went, oh my God, yes, this is what I can get excited about. This is what I can specialize in. And the universe went, you're right, you're on track now, girl. This is what you're here to do. Have this information, meet this person. I went to America twice to 2 different conferences. I was invited by the amazing Suzanne Arms, who is a real birth advocate for natural birthing. And, I met the most incredible people there that, I'm still in contact with, that I love very much. And the universe just filled my head with information. And then it got to the point of like, I have all this information, what am I going to do with it? So I started teaching and sharing it with people. And then obviously the book was birthed, if you like, because I just had this, I've got to get all this knowledge out of my head, all these magical experiences, magic happens when we do this work. When we go into the quantum field, we do this work. As a mother, you are so connected to your child. So even, really estranged children, think about the guy I've just said who was adopted and knew nothing about his parents. He was still being influenced by his parents, even though he had never met them. We are all connected.
That is so powerful. Powerful. So someone like me has the same type of birth as Carolyn, and we can read your book, we can look at the resources, we can tap it out, and we have a different. So if you don't know if there's any trauma, you've got this kid who's got anxiety or some kind of mental health issues, depression, whatever, but you don't know. You feel like you had fine breastfeeding, I latched on, everything was fine, but something's there. Is that where you would start?
Yeah.
And I mean, not therapy, not any of this. We would start here. And if you don't know or you don't remember, can you just do a re-imprint without knowing the history? So can you just create a new story without tapping out the old story?
No.
Okay.
That is what I call wallpapering over the cracks.
Okay. So what if you don't know?
But you do know. Everything that happens to you from conception onwards is recorded in your subconscious. You just have to access it.
Tell me more. How do we do that?
So think about hypnosis. You know, people will go into a hypnosis session and will come up with concepts of what happened if they don't remember it. So everything is recorded. As I say, everything is recorded and held in the field, if you like. I call it a trauma capsule.
Okay.
All right. And even though we don't consciously remember, the information is still there. So, and I know this to be true because I've worked with so many people who knew nothing about their birth. Then they go back and work with their baby self in utero, and their baby self in utero is telling you they feel X, Y, and Z because mum's feeling X, Y, and Z. And then they go back and they say to mum, you know, I've just done this session and this information came in. And the mum will go, like, how do you know that? And it's like, well, I was there. I was the baby in utero. I was there, but it's just come up in the session because my baby self told me this is how you're feeling.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
You don't have to consciously remember it. The first step is always like, what's currently going on right now? Tune into your body. Now, I'm suspecting a lot of mothers right now are going, oh my God, I did everything wrong. Like this explains a lot. Yeah. So I'm just going to say right now at this point, you were doing the best you could with the knowledge and understanding you had at the time. Yep. That goes for all of us. The doctors in the room, the midwives, the nurses, the OBGYN, XYZ, whatever initials they go by now. You know, everybody's doing the best they can with the knowledge and understanding. Now, their best may not be your best. Like, I have heard some pretty horrendous stories of what's happened to women while they're in the birthing process. And that's not, anyway. So even in the biggest traumas where we do suppress what happens to us in our childhood, the energy of what happened is still there in your body. So by tuning in, using your body like you would a desktop, so tuning into your body, where do I feel the energy of that? All right. Even just setting the intention, I want to work on my birth. I know nothing about it. Most people know something. They know whether they're a hospital birth or whether they're C-section birth or whether they're a home birth. Most people know something. Just 2 bits of information is enough.
Okay.
Right. Was your dad present? Not present. Everybody knows something.
Yeah.
All right. Just by setting the intention of I want to look at my birth experience, you tune into the body. Where in my body is my story being held? Where is my birth story being held? And then as you tune into your body, you become very present in your body. Right. Okay. So I can feel the energy in my tummy. I can feel the energy in my chest, or I can feel it in my throat. Throat is a very, quite often it's either because we're not being able to speak out or maybe the cord is around our neck. Yeah. So, and then you just go from there. It's just like, okay, so we just go back in time and just what's the first thing you're sensing about your baby self? Oh, she's like really fearful right now. Okay. What's going on? How much of that fear belongs to your baby self? How much of it belongs to mum? Oh, I don't know. 80% is coming to mind. So 80% is mums. Okay, so we're going to go and tap on mum for her fear. Once mum's changed her fear to feeling more empowered, then that influences the baby self, which then in turn influences you, because you are attached still to your baby self.
That is incredible. That is incredible. And what was really, when I was reading the book, just the words, like when dad was expecting a girl and not a boy, and verbalized it. And I tell you, the first thing I thought of when I got to that point was, that's why I hate gender reveals. I despise gender reveals for just that reason. Because if it's not what everybody's looking for, I feel like they're already sensing a disappointment. And I felt that in my bones when I read that. And I thought, oh my goodness. So you can, like, there was a part of that book where, your book, where the dad did say that, and then they had to tap into, I'm trying to remember, remind me that was it the daughter? Did you tap into the daughter?
So
to reprint that story?
I think I'm just trying to think of which story you're here. Maybe it was the one where the lady I was working with always felt like her father wanted a boy rather than a girl, and she ended up being a very astute businesswoman who always wore business suits and had very short hair. In fact, she'd even 2 days earlier gone to a men's barber shop to get her hair cut. Right, that's how. Oh, that's right. And it started off, that was when we were doing the beliefs. So in my book, there's a list of beliefs that you can go through, like the world's not a safe place, I'm not good enough, I'm unlovable, blah, blah, blah. So for her, one of the things that came up on the sheet of paper that we were given was, my penis is not big enough. Yeah. And she started laughing. She wouldn't tell me. She said, no, because you're going to think it's silly. I said, come on, we've got to work on something. And she said, well, my penis isn't big enough. And I'm going, okay. So I laughed, because that's a funny statement for a woman to say. And then she said, no, really? She said, my dad wanted a boy.
Wow.
So then we had to go back into her birth experience, or her in utero experience, which I think it was her birth, where dad was disappointed, or she felt the disappointment because he wanted a boy. But then, most people will love the sex of, love the child for who they are. But, culturally, I work with a lot of Indian people, for instance, where in the culture, women are very low down the pecking order, and men are the prized possession children. So there's a lot of Indian women, for instance, that carry that shame for being the wrong sex.
Oh, my goodness. Okay. I have to respect time here. I think I could talk to you all night long. The book was amazing. I just, the style, you got right to the point. I loved everything about it. So I highly recommend everybody read Heal Your Birth, Heal Your Life. But I just want to, lasting words for parents. If they are seeing what? If you're concerned about what, then we do what?
Yeah. So there's always two ways to go at this. So look at what it's triggering in you first. All right. Because our children are very good mirrors. All right. They will mirror to you your triggers. Right. Same as being in a relationship with a husband, wife, girlfriend, boyfriend. Yes. Any unhealed triggers, traumas will come smack you in the face, because that other person is bringing that to your awareness. So first of all, I always say to mums, like, what is this triggering in you? Deal with you first. Right. So as you're listening to this, what's coming up for you? If you're judging yourself, for instance, do some tapping on that. If your child's getting you really angry because they're disrespectful, what is that bringing up in you? So once you've first of all addressed yourself, you then will go to the child. So one of the books I always recommend people read is Dr. Gabor Mate's book, Hold On to Your Kids. And that's a very good book for parents of teenagers, because what he's saying is this developmental stage and this is something that I wanted to kind of add in here as well, and then I will answer your question. The bonding process, there's 2 times in our lives that's absolutely optimal time for bonding. All right, so nature set it up that this is the perfect bonding time. One is birth. The second is when you hit 13, 14, 15, and that's when you start bonding with people outside of the family. So if you think back to your first love when you were a teenager, how powerful experience was that for you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very.
Me too. Me too. I met a boy when I was 13, and I was so in love with him until I was 17, and he broke my heart twice. Right, he broke my heart when I was 13, and then he broke my heart again when I was 16, 17, because we split up and got back together again. It was the most well, and then I had another one when I was 26 with a different guy, but that's a whole nother story, and that one's in Return to the Mother Earth. And we could even talk about that another time. But so when children start to prepare to leave home by bonding with other kids outside of the family, right? It's natural. It's going to happen. But if you don't have that firm bond connection with them really early on, then where the people that they choose to bond with may not be the ideal people. So
interesting.
Yeah, so let's just give an example of a little boy or a teenage boy. He was birthed with a lot of medical intervention. Let's just say you ended up having a C-section. He ended up in the NICU or intensive care or whatever for, a few hours, a few days, whatever. So he doesn't get that bonding time. And then you'll get given this baby, and you're having to almost like start from the beginning of going through the bonding process. If you can do that straight from birth without the interruption, then it flows so much easier than if there's a big gap, because the optimal time for bonding is the first 45 minutes. All right, that's the cream of the crop, the exact time. So if that child's never felt that connection and closeness to the family, and there's a lot of rage and resentment against mum for not being there for her. And I had this in my own birth experience. I was put in the nursery for 5 hours while my mum recovered from the pethidine she was given. All right. So I had this unconscious frustration and anger towards her because it felt like she wasn't there for me. All right. By going back and looking at my own birth experience, I realized that the disconnect started in utero because I felt like I was in a toxic womb because she was smoking cigarettes and she was emotionally toxic to me. But then at birth, she betrayed me by having the pethidine. I was coming out, and then I got stopped from coming out by the pethidine. She went to sleep. Then I had to fight my way out, and then I was separated. She held me for a minute, she said, then I was separated from her for 4 or 5 hours. And it was my baby self, when I visited my baby self, who's like trying to get out of her body to help the other babies that are crying in her environment, because she couldn't stand the pain that the other babies were feeling. I realized in that moment that's where I set up my life mission, my life purpose, to heal this.
Yes.
Because I could see her wanting to help people. So I had to really honor her for going through that experience, because without that experience, I wouldn't be doing the work I do now.
Yeah.
So let's come back to types of birth as well. So, actually, let me finish that first. So so your teenager is primed to bond with other people outside of the family, to create relationships outside of the family. This is a natural process, but who they choose to have that relationship with. So if you're angry, if you're running subconscious this anger and resentment and never felt close as a family to your mum, your dad, whatever, or maybe you've had a lot of abuse experiences, then you're going to be drawn like a moth to the flame to a group of other men or boys that have that same anger, that have that same rage. And your first time in your life, you're going to feel like you fit in. You're going to feel like you're understood because you can feel that these boys feel the same way as you do.
Oh my God.
And then you're going to make a alliance, and it's almost like it's a trauma bond. You're bonded to that group because of trauma, but you feel like you're in love because in the first time I feel like I'm understood, and we're going to go out and we're going to do X, Y, and Z together. And it may be like not good behavior, but it feels good because for once you're accepted for who you are. You're not being told off by these other kids because you're angry and you want to, do harmful things to things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So Dr. Gabor talks about in his book why it's so important to hold on to your kids, to create that bond. So when they do start to move away, they still have somewhere safe to come back to, and they go out, they experience life, and they can come back. But if there's not that strong connection going through, they'll go out, experience life, and bond with those people, and then it feels like you're losing them, or you've lost them, and then you don't understand them. And I also want to say about, if you experience a drug birth, you're more likely to play with drugs. Yeah. If you're born by C-section, and you're more likely to have a fetish or a thing about knives.
Wow.
If you're born emergency C-section, that means psychologically, it means that you can start a project like you started your birth, but then you get stuck. So you then need somebody to pull you out of the situation. Right. So it may be just something as simple as homework, or the transition from home, going to play school, going to school, going to university, onto a job. Those transitions are going to feel difficult because although you want to do it, you're going to get stuck halfway, and you're going to need somebody else to pull you out of the situation. However, if you're born if you're elective, that's the word I'm looking for, elective C-section. Think about it. You're a baby, you're hanging out, you're asleep, you're not doing much. Something's about to happen because it's getting really squashed in here, but you don't know what. Next minute, somebody unzips your roof and pulls you out. All right.
Yeah.
You haven't gone through the slow transition of going down the birth canal and being squeezed and having your whole body stimulated by that birth experience. 1 minute you're hanging out, probably asleep or not doing much. The next minute you're out. There's bright lights. There's men wearing masks. There's this, it's cold. There's this horrible smell going on. And where's mum? What's happening? Where am I? But those babies learn to assimilate information really quickly. So as a child, you're going to find that child is going to pick things up really quickly because they had to go from here to out here, and they had to learn to process that very quickly. So I always know people on a course who are the early births. They come early because they're always early at my workshop, and the late ones always come late.
That's amazing. Oh
and I'm always about 5-10 minutes late for everything, just because my birth was delayed. So I always I get ready, I'm ready, and then something will come up and delay me. Right? And that pattern just continues. I laugh at it because I can see it. I mean, it doesn't ruin my life, so I don't really do much about it, even though I have done my own birth experience. It's just one of those patterns. It's yeah, all my friends know, Sharon's going to be 5 or 10 minutes late. There's something that will delay her, probably her cats, and then she'll be here, which was exactly like I was with my birth.
Oh, all of this makes so much sense. And I've never heard anything like this. Never heard anything like this. Okay, so I want to tie it together. So mom is seeing 13-year-old son going out, playing with the wrong people, getting the wrong connections. Can she now tap into the birth?
Yes.
And she can create that whole story.
Yes.
She doesn't have to do it with him.
Yes. Yeah.
She can do, okay.
Yes, exactly. No. You don't want to go anywhere near your teenagers with this because I honestly, like, I get mothers going, will you work with my teenager? And I'm going, how long have you been doing EFT tapping with your teenager, and how open are they to it? And it's like, well, yeah, we used to do it when they were a child and they loved it, but now, like, like, mum, don't do that silly shit with me now.
Yeah.
And it's like, I remember what it's like as a teenager. You think you know everything,
Of course.
and you also don't want any of that Wookiee stuff that mum does.
Yeah.
So going back to my client who we worked with the mother-in-law that threw her out at 4 months pregnant, we went back and we healed that trauma, and the two women had a conversation and they both understood where they were coming from, and she forgave her and blah, blah, blah. This is no longer trauma for her. She came on the next call and I said, okay, my usual question is, okay, so what's changed since last session? And she said, well, you never guess what? I had a conversation with my son. He's a lot more relaxed. He's this, he's happy. He's, you know, I even said to him, like, do you still have that fear of, you know, like having to move house, having to be forced to move house? He went, what are you talking about, Mum?
Wow.
And that's called the apex effect. And we get that sometimes as well. It's like when you go back and you change something in your timeline, you forget you even had that problem.
Wow. Well, that's amazing. Well, I want to respect your time. I feel like I could talk about this for the next week with you. This is so good. It's so interesting and it makes so much sense. There's nothing in me that says, what? Nothing. Like, and probably reading the book really helped because I had a lot of basis there, but it's incredible. Thank you for your work. It's so amazing. So please now tell our listeners where we can find you, how we can work with you, all of those beautiful things.
Well, the best way is to go to my website, magicalnewbeginnings.com. And there you'll find a contact form. You can also email me. You can go directly past the website and email me at sharon@magicalnewbeginnings.com. I have a Facebook page as well, but that's the most of the information is usually on my own personal Sharon King Facebook page. Yeah, but I also this year I'm going to start podcasting as well. So
fantastic.
So, yes.
Oh, that's great. Well, thank you so much. I think maybe we can do this again. I think I might have some more questions if we can do this again. This was so interesting, and I'm so glad you found your purpose.
Thank you.
And thank you. I'm so glad you shared it with us. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to Teen Minds Redefined. Please, it's so important to us if you share and get this into the ears and the hands of people who need to hear this information. This is so good. Thank you. Thanks for stopping by, and we'll see you next time.